Who is the best head coaching hire in the last 10 years? This is actually a pretty good question. And yes, Kirby Smart is on that list. Question is he the best one? So the last 12 years, that cuts out guys like Urban Meyer at Ohio State. I think a lot of us would have felt like he would have been that. I think it gets narrowed down to, and I don't want to leave anybody out here, so I'm double checking everybody. So like, do you think that like Matt Rule at Baylor, who did a really good job at Baylor, but he's not there anymore, or Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, or Chris Peterson at Washington, he's not at Washington anymore. Um, you know, that's the question. But I think it really comes down to our old friend Ryan Day at Ohio State, Lincoln Riley, who is now at USC, and I think to some degree, you can make the argument of Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss and people like that. But it's hard for this not to come down to very specifically Ryan Day and Kirby. The difference and the only difference between the two is that Kirby's won the national championship and Ryan Day has not. I think we all know my view on this, which is that he will win the national championship at Ohio State. He's played for a national championship in the 2020 season, which was shortened by COVID. Lost in the Fiesta Bowl by a play to Clemson in the 2019 playoffs. But in his entire time at Ohio State, Ryan Day has lost 3 games. So that's not, I mean, that's pretty exceptional, really. Um, and I'm not I do not subscribe to the thinking that you have to have won a national championship to be the best coach, or you have to have won multiple national championships. Gene Chizik won a national championship, so that does not. I mean, Mark Richt was a better coach than Gene Chizik, and I would tell you it's not really very close. So national championships do matter a lot, but I do think Ryan Day will be a successful coach, but that I can really only get down to, Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, Lincoln Riley. I think to some degree, you could have said Dan Mullen coming in. If this were a year ago, we would be talking about Dan Mullen. Um, it's amazing how quick things fall apart. I would not have been talking, for instance, about Ed Orgeron. He is going to join Gene Chizik as a one-off, bizarre, strange national championship coach. I think speaking of LSU as well, the question is Brian Kelly in this talk? Um, what we can't know that yet, but the shaking loose of the head coach of Oklahoma to take over the USC job, the head coach at Notre Dame to go take the LSU job. Um, a lot of people would tell you that the SEC is the reason why for both of those situations. Number one, that Lincoln Riley didn't want to deal with the SEC. I don't know if that's true or not. Number two, and I think this is true, that Brian Kelly knew he could not win a national championship at Notre Dame, not the way things are structured right now. And the thing about it is that when you look at Kirby Smart's time at Georgia, uh, with the exception perhaps of the Texas game in 2018, or some game here or some game there, it's hard not to think almost from the start that that he was the right fit for Georgia. Now, I talk about Ryan Day. Kirby's been the coach at Georgia for 6 seasons. Unlike Ryan Day, there was a acclimation time period for him at Georgia. They went 8-5 that first year with blowout loss to Mississippi, an upset win over uh, Auburn at home, and an upset loss to Georgia Tech that really set the program in stone moving forward. Since that time, Georgia has not lost more than 3 games in a season, and that only happened once, which was 2018. They have typically gone to the SEC championship game. They have not typically gone to the playoff, but if Georgia goes to the playoff in 22, that will be 3 times in 6 seasons that will have occurred. So I don't think Kirby is the best coach in college football. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that my mind won't change about that in the coming years, but we'll just have to see. Another hire in the past 10 years is Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, and the four-loss Aggies have not lived up to the chatter in their time. We're going to see if LSU lives up to its chatter with Brian Kelly coming into this whole thing. I want to make sure you are picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. Make sure you are picking this up. It's the #1 way to support us. You see Kirby on the back there. A lot of really awesome stuff in here. Forward was by Jeff Foxworthy. It's a really actually great forward from Jeff. He talks about my granddaddy loved Vince Dooley. I once did a book signing, and Coach Dooley was signing one of his books at the next table. I asked him to please sign a book for my grandfather. Um, he wrote to James Camp, a great friend of the Bulldogs. When I gave it to my granddaddy, I think that's the closest I ever came to see him cry. The other one that was so funny uh, that Jeff wrote in here was talking about. Um, he said, "My grandfather was my hero. He loved to fish. He loved tomato sandwiches, but he didn't love anything more than the Georgia Bulldogs, including my grandmother." Um, I appreciate Jeff doing that. It's actually a sad. I find what Jeff wrote in here to be very sad, but in like a good way, kind of, because I think it really matches what a lot of people have felt like their feeling of Georgia over the years. But anyway, pick up our structures and the link is down below. Um, I think it's a curious thing because we've got a couple of coaches that have in this brief offseason with Brian Kelly moving to LSU, with Lincoln Riley moving to USC, those are the two spots that I would watch the most. Those two schools have the capability of being total powers in every way. Um, and if you don't think so, you're burying your head in the sand. But it's going to be tough to knock out Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama along the way. Clemson is still hanging out. And we'll see what happens there. A lot of people think they're trending the wrong way, but they seem to hang around a lot more than people give them credit for. And we'll see what happens with Oklahoma now that Brent Venables left Clemson to go to coach at OU. I have my doubts there as well, frankly, but it's hard to make the argument that it's not either Ryan Day or Kirby in the last 10 years. The only separator is Kirby's national championship win. Um, I do think that Georgia has performed better when getting into the playoff than Oklahoma has. Excuse me, than Ohio State has. Certainly better than Oklahoma, but better than Ohio State has. But um, you know, it is a challenging slog at the top. And one thing that Kirby talked about in this offseason, and he's right, is it's the gusts of wind at the top of the mountain are more pronounced. And he's right. And so we'll see where Georgia goes from here as they get ready for the 2022 season. Is Kirby the best coach that's been added in the last 10 years? You tell me down below.